Good morning. I would be very happy, I would be very pleased if the worship team would just continue singing the whole morning. And we will just continue to sing. I have thoroughly loved this morning. My name is Peter. Welcome here. I'm one of the pastors here. If you're new here, so am I. You're very welcome here. This is a great place that you've landed. We're in the process of working our way through a series called How Do We Do This? Anyone ever not known how to do something but still sort of been tasked with doing it? I replaced a dishwasher this week. Not my finest moment. YouTube helps. We need sometimes to learn how things are done. We need to kind of study on it sometimes. And we're going through a book called The Celebration of Discipline. For some of you, that will raise some anxiety because discipline is not your strong suit. That's okay. Totally fine. For some of you will say, yes, now we're down to something. Discipline. Here, here. Calm down. It's a celebration of discipline, and I want you to put the emphasis on celebration, not discipline. For those of you who have bought this book, great, and I've heard from many of you that you're following along. I've heard some of you even read the chapter before you come to church on Sunday morning, this morning, and I think that's wonderful. People are engaged in this, and that's great. There are going to be people in this room who have thought about buying the book, have meant to buy the book, have considered buying the book, have maybe even researched buying the book, but they have not yet bought the book. We have a few for sale out back. You can go get them there. It's also available on all the different audiobook and all the different platforms. It's well available, and I want to encourage you to do it. It's time. It's time to engage. Today, we are talking about study. Here's what I know. 20%, statistically speaking, 20% of the people in the congregation right now just experienced a little bit of dread. A little bit of, oh no, a little bit of this again. I say that because 20% of the people, statistically speaking, in this congregation do not learn in the primary ways learning is taught. Sit down, concentrate, clear yourself of any distractions, read, and then write it down. No less than 20% in this room simply cannot learn that way. It would be easier for me to tell you to fly. I am one of those 20%. I've told you about my dyslexia. It's always fun to sit down and read this and like, sure. How? Well, what you got to do is get rid of distractions. Oh, you mean the thing that will allow me to focus? It's always funny when a new technology gets invented. Not too long ago, TikTok came out, and those who learn in the way that sit down and read, they said, TikTok is terrible. Get rid of TikTok. It will ruin society. If you're built like me, TikTok is a gift from God. 12 seconds and it's over and something new comes. Totally unrelated. A bunch of you are smiling and a bunch of you are frowning. Those of you who are frowning, I already know what you got in your report card. Those of you who are smiling get it, don't you? Don't you? Oh man, a whole bunch of people here have not heard the last half of their favorite song. Why would you listen to the whole thing? It takes forever. It's like 4 minutes. I just made everybody anxious in here. At some point so far in the sermon, someone has got anxious. 4 to 6% of adults in Canada, in Saskatchewan, today, 4 to 6% are diagnosed with ADHD. I am one of those. 5 to 7% of children are diagnosed with ADHD. If you're an adult, perhaps you were diagnosed with ADD, which doesn't exist anymore. They wanted to add the H in there. I was diagnosed with ADD, and then I got told I was wrong, and now I have ADHD. So I think that's a thumbs up. I'm doing well. I'm gaining letters. People go to school for a long time to gain letters. They just gave them to me. A whole bunch of us in here have memory issues. I'll tell you something, you won't remember it. You were introduced to someone today. He stood up at the front, told you his name, told you he was the chairman of the board, and told you a whole bunch of stuff, and you can't remember his name. Yeah. You see, the way we study has changed, has been modified, as people who study have learned more about study. They have said, hey, the way we do it doesn't work. For those whom it works very well, you become quite annoyed. Why don't you just concentrate? Just buckle down, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And then there's a whole bunch of people in here that have heard that so much that when I say today we're going to talk about study, you fall into defeat. You are not alone. In fact, you are far from alone. And I want you to know that study has been hard for me every day of my life, and it will continue to be hard for me every day in my life. It is not permission for me not to do it. I study a lot because someone's got to stand up here and talk. I study hard. But it's harder for me than it is for many. The very fact that you could sit down and read something. I'm jealous. But guess what? God made me. God made you. He made you the way He made you, and then He said it is good. And don't you dare let someone take that from you. Oh, and by the way, don't you dare take that from someone else. Just don't do it. Just don't. Do you know there is not a situation, unless you are actually paid to do it, there is not a situation where you should ever correct someone's grammar or spelling. Oh, I'm quite sure you're right. I'm quite sure you know the answer. This is the right way to spell. The person who just came out there with their best offering of how to spell something, they already know they can't spell. You needn't remind them. Just don't. Just don't. Guys like me do not respond well to that. Not terribly concerned if you're right. Just don't. It's mean. Study. We do study something, though. All of us do, don't we? All of us study something. Do you want me to prove it? Bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Ooh, you knew that one, did you? Huh. It would take you 7 days, 14 minutes, and 3 seconds to watch everything Star Wars. Raise your hand if you've done it. Don't lie. We study something. 34.9 days to watch everything Star Trek. Raise your hand. Come on. Be proud. I cannot figure out, although I tried, how many hours it would take to catch up on all the Rough Rider stuff. Hour upon day upon year. The Green Zone. I really feel like we should move on from the Rough Rider. You know what I mean, though. We'll move on from that one. Just put that in an envelope, lick it, seal it, put it in your pocket. We'll deal with that one the next day. Politics. Endless hours. In fact, it wouldn't be possible because more than one person is talking about politics at any given time, and it has existed through all of time. By the way, this is such a side note, but I just got to let you know something. At the very beginning, we said, hey, we want a king. And And God said, no, you don't. And we said, no, we really do. And they said, no, you don't. He said, yeah, but I checked with my neighbor. We really do. And God said, okay, but you won't like it. Turns out he was right. I don't know who would get elected next, and I am not going to have that conversation with you, but I promise you one thing, we ain't going to like it. We're supposed to focus on God. We would know that if we study. 68 hours and 20 minutes if you've watched every Marvel everything. Raise your hand. Come on. Come on. My wife's hand was up. She didn't want anyone to know, but it was right here. I saw it. But she was 68 hours and 20 minutes of watching Marvel. Just Marvel. And that's the only one we would really watch because the other one nobody watches. How many hours have you spent watching public communicators and trying to figure out what is it that they did? Apparently that one's just me. I do it all the time. I watch and I study the method of communicators. And this is a hard one. When I talk about this, so often people respond with, this is the content that they said that I liked or I didn't like. And I'm not interested in the content. I'm interested in the method. How did they tell that story in a way that years later everybody can tell? How did they put this one sentence together that absolutely changed the world? Winston Churchill said some things you can quote, and you might not actually know who Winston Churchill is. Stuff that I study, stuff that I have put my life into. We study all kinds of things. We put amazing time into stuff. In West Philadelphia, born and raised. "72 hours to watch it all. I'm Slim Shady. Woo, there was a time that would not have been said on stage. I'm glad you can't remember the name of the board chair. We put huge time into studying stuff, don't we? We all study something. We all put our energy into something. We all have a mind. So when I talk about study, I want you to disconnect the idea that you will sit down with the textbook and be asked to reproduce what is in that textbook. That is not what I'm talking about, and it is not what God teaches us. Oh, it is part of what God teaches us, but it is absolutely not the entirety of it. And today I'm going to work my way through it. I'm going to put my finger right on top of it, and I'm going to say, see, God made you so you can study. Yes, you can. Psalm chapter 119, verses 1 to 8. I love how the New Living Translation says this. Joyful are the people of integrity who follow the instructions of the law. Can we agree that we all want to be joyful? I know lots of people who are not joyful, but I don't know anyone who says, if I could choose between joy and sorrow, I would pick sorrow. There are some sicknesses inside of people that say, joy is not for me, I can't have that, but deep down inside of them, they wish there was joy. Joyful are the people. Joyful are those who obey his laws and search for him with all their hearts. You have to know what his laws are. You have to look into what is said. You have to look into what is written. You have to talk with those who have read if you cannot read it yourself. We have to find out. Let's go to the next slide. They don't compromise with evil, and they walk only in his paths. Scriptures are the GPS. Have you ever met someone who will not check a map, will not look at a GPS? You ever ridden around with them, and when you're done, you say, wow, they're wise? We were driving from Regina to Moose Jaw, made it all the way to Winnipeg. You never do. You never do. You say, for those of you who are directionally challenged, that's two different directions entirely. It's our GPS. You have charged us to keep your commandments carefully, so we best know what they are, hey? We best learn. We best be in a community where we talk about such things and we understand this is what is said, this is what is written, and this is what we are to do. Oh, that my actions would consistently reflect your decrees. That I would not be ashamed when I compare my life with your commands. When I read and when I hear what you wanted from me, God, I don't want to be ashamed because that's what I didn't do. I didn't do it because I didn't know. I didn't know because I didn't look. I didn't talk. I didn't listen. I didn't study. Because, God, I gave you my everything, but not my mind. I gave you my heart. I gave you my soul. I maybe gave you some of my finances. Maybe. But you can't have my mind. Can't have that. Or maybe I gave you my mind, but only so much that I already agree with what is being said. I only look to that which is comforting for me. As soon as something is discomforting, as soon as something challenges what I'm certain about, no. Not that. Only what I'm comfortable with. And I learn your righteous regulations. I will thank you by living as I should. There is a way we are to live. Wouldn't it be interesting to find out what it is? Wouldn't it be interesting? This is another place so often people fly the white flag. They say, I'm out. I have already not lived the way you want me to live. I've got great news for you. Literally every person has not lived the way God wants us to live. Actually, I can't speak for you. Literally me. But what Jesus came and did on the cross, his blood covers all, even that thing you wouldn't dare speak out loud, especially that. I will obey your decrees. Please don't give up on me. Have you ever heard that cry? Have you ever said that? I did it again, God. I did it again. And if I were you, I'd turn your back to me, but please don't. Don't turn your back to me. 2 Timothy 3, verses 16 and 17. All Scripture is inspired by God and is useful to teach us in what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. It corrects us when we are wrong and teaches us to do what is right. It teaches us. It guides us. It took me a long time to think that a person in authority wasn't there to get me, because I spent time in the principal's office. Raise your hand if you've never been to the principal's office. How? I don't even get it. Now, how many of you are married to the person that just raised their hand? Yeah. Pat, I'm so glad you're here, man. I love you, brother. How many of you, now this is some insider baseball here. Let's see how this goes. How many of you got your school desk dragged over to where the carpet is? Yeah, me too. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, but we know, don't we? That's not where you want to be. That parent-teacher interviews come up and you're like, why is your desk over there? I don't know. He just likes me very much. That's where I am. God uses it to prepare and equip his people to do every good work. There is a preparation we go through, and it has a purpose. God is engaged. God is the finest teacher there will ever be. God is the one that says, I made you for this. I was active in the design of you. I have made you in such a way that you will be effective in what I have asked from you, what I will equip you to do, and what I will send you off to do. You are the answer to this through me. Oh, that's different than what I heard growing up. And it might be different from what you heard. And you might have grown up in a family where the family says you are a mistake. You might have grown up in a family where the family said you are broken, you are wrong. You might have grown up in a family where you were not wanted. But what God said is, I rolled up my sleeves and I created something in my image for a reason. And when it was done, the perfect God stepped back and said, look at what I made. That's what God says about you. For some of you, you should probably just leave right now. You should go and you should pray into that. You should say, God, what do you say about me? And then you should be quiet and you should listen until God is done speaking. Clear your calendar. He's got a lot to say about you. This becomes a conversation of authority, doesn't it? Who gets to say what? What we absorb comes out. It will not take me long if I just meet you. It won't take me long to sit with you and find out what you're into. You ever notice that musicians' music? They just sitting there, no instruments around, but there's just music. You ever listen to a percussionist wait? You ever seen someone who is just gifted with children? If you stick around with me very long at all, you're going to notice what I study. If you come into our house, we have this 4-level split. You'll find out what my family studies. You come into the front door and you take a right-hand turn. There's 3 or 4 steps going downstairs. And at the bottom of the steps is the Agatha Christie bookcase. I'm not allowed to touch that one. That's not for me. That's the Agatha. My wife studies Agatha Christie. Everything. You take another right, 180 degrees. There's a couple more stairs that goes down to the real basement. There's another bookcase down there. There's some novels, some fiction. There's quite a bit of World War I and World War II stuff on there. I love that. You're going to find biographies, particularly of rock and roll bands and stars. I love that. You're going to find some classic car books, some really dry reading where they literally are giving you measurements of valve faces and all this kind of stuff. How to properly jet a car, just page-turning stuff. You can all come borrow it if you want. It's what I study. You'll find biblical stuff. If you come into my office, you are going to find a ton of stuff about church leadership. You're going to find a ton of stuff about preaching. You're going to find a ton of stuff about biblical interpretation. It's what I study. It won't take long for you to find out. Because what we prepare for emerges from us. It really does. What we prepare for comes out of us whether or not we mean it to. So the question is, what do we prepare for and how do we prepare? One of the things that we prepare for is for children to learn from us, because they're going to learn from us whether or not we are prepared for them. They might be our kids and they might not be our kids, but they are going to learn from us because kids are learning sponges. They're like vacuum cleaners of knowledge. They just suck it up from everywhere. And one person teaches them a little bit about math, and another person teaches them a little bit about history, and someone else teaches them about identity, and someone else teaches them about God, and someone else teaches them about color, and someone else teaches them about music. And all of this gets brought into them, and it forms the person they become. What we study comes out of us. Isaiah 55, verses 6 to 12. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord and he will have mercy on them. Right there, guys, some of you feel like whenever we talk about God, he walks along with a cane and he whack, gotcha. Whack, gotcha. You're bad, smite. No, whack. That's not what it says, is it? Let them turn to the Lord and he will have mercy on them. And to our God, for he will freely pardon. See, if we study the scriptures, what we find in it is actually good news. The best news. You are pardoned. And here's a GPS. For my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. The way you think is not how God thinks. What you are certain of, God is not necessarily certain of. And we need to be careful anytime we get to the place where we are completely certain about something. Totally certain, especially within the idea of Christianity. This is right and everything else is wrong. I believe this is the reason why I believe this, and everything else is wrong. Anyone who thinks anything different is wrong. Can I suggest you might not have a theology problem, you might have an idolatry problem. Certainty is a very dangerous, sneaky little thing. What it means is, I'll not participate in anything I don't already know. Careful. Careful. That means no one else learns how other people learn. That means nothing changes. It's this way. No new information comes and changes stuff. This is where science, people begin to look at science and they begin to say it's evil. Even though science is only the discovery of what God did. But as soon as we can't learn something new, as soon as we are certain, then anything new that comes has got to be evil. Careful. Careful. And the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And the rain and the snow will come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater. Do you understand the imagination it took to pull that off? Maybe I could have come up with the idea of rain. But never would I have come up with the idea that through that rain you will eat. I'd have said you will drink. And then never would I have come up with the idea that the sun would suck that back up, put it back up in the sky, and it happens again. My imagination is not that big. Oh, but the glory of God. The imagination of God and the discovery of what God has created. So here's what this means. It means for some of us, particularly those who the thought of sitting down to read something, we'd just rather not. Perhaps you need to go outside and you need to study nature. Not because you will find God in nature, but because nature exists in God. because he created it, and because it screams his name. Let's go to the next verse. So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but it will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Can you imagine what could be learned through study? It's one of the spiritual disciplines. Study. It's one of the things that we push towards, and we say, God, what will you teach me? What will those wiser than me, those older than me, those younger than me, what will they teach me? I remember my children, one of my favorite things, I watch for it every year, Christmas morning. In our house, we have a Christmas tree with lots of Christmas lights on it. And they get up in the morning and they come downstairs and it's still dark outside. And the very first thing we do is plug in the Christmas tree. And in the dark, it lights up. And my kids stand back and they go, wow. God made light. God made color. God made trees. God made emotion. It's amazing what we can learn from God when we hit pause for a minute and we really, really study. Verse 12. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you. And all the trees of the fields will clap their hands. It's funny, trees and fields, that doesn't go together in my mind, but it goes together in some people's minds. The idea that the very trees are clapping. That this expression of God's creation and his goodness and his imagination and his provision and his love screams out to him. We do study, don't we? Let's go to the next verse. No, sorry, we got to go back. I'm not done with the last one. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and the trees of the fields will clap their hands. I also want you to hear this. There are many times in my life I can't read. And having someone jump up and down in front of me and say, try really hard, doesn't change a thing. Makes me feel less, but doesn't change anything. And in those moments, I need to go out and I need to roll around on my lawn. I need to go into my garage and I need to work on a car. I need to go eat something that's good, drink something that's good, smell something that's good. I need to go find my beautiful wife and ruin her day. She's not getting anything done. I need to go find my children and discover what makes them tick. I need to walk into your world and say, teach me, show me something. Let me hear something. We study. And even the trees of the field will clap their hands. Now, I need to draw a line here. I want to just be very pragmatic about something. And here's a bit of a danger, okay? I just want to say there is a very clear division between devotions and study. You need both. For some of us, it's devotions always. We are looking for that thing that will recharge our battery for that day, will fill our tank, will fill our bellies enough for that day, and it's important and you need that. But the thing that you're looking for in that is so specific that what it does not do is challenge you. Because challenging you means that you have to stop and think about that for a while. You might need to kneel in submission before God and say, I didn't know that and now I need to, and it's going to change my ways. You need that devotional life, but you need study. It takes your mind. It takes time. It takes you purposefully looking into that thing that you are absolutely certain of, but not everybody is certain of, and saying, is there more for me to learn? I was taught in Bible school, be careful with certainty, because there are godly women and men who have studied longer than you who do not agree with you. And it is so easy for us to just shut that down. In fact, we are encouraged to do it. The algorithm agrees with us all the time. But study is challenging. It is something new. It is something I do not already know. Certainty is oftentimes the opposite of study. There is a woman whom I love who wants me to preach on Revelations, the end times, just about only. That's about all she ever wants to hear. If I wasn't preaching on Revelations, she would allow me to preach on Daniel. But that's going to be it over and over and over again. I look at her and I think she is so full of fear. And when I do talk about Revelations, it's not satisfying to her because she wants to know exactly what's going to happen in the end times so that she can prepare for it. And what she cannot hear is, in order to prepare for it, start at Genesis. You know what she's doing? She's skipping the meal and going straight to the dishes. There was a meal she missed. There was nourishment. There was a GPS. There was a journey. There was a thought pattern. There was a will of God. There was an understanding of who God is and who God made you to be. And there is the answer to fear. There is the answer to certainty. But we want to skip that because for some reason this idea of when this comes to an end is so much more compelling. Don't skip the meal and go for the dishes. Do the dishes, but don't skip the meal. Spend most of your time at the meal. You should buy a dishwasher. I know how to install one. Don't call me. I don't want to. I want to make enough money that I never have to plumb. Ever. Don't skip the meal. Freedom exists through the study of who God is and what He has done. The study of God and what God's work is. The study of God and that God is in control. The study of God and that God has a plan. The study of God in that God has created. Oh, but God also sustains. The study of God in that He is love. God is love. Hey, Christians, for those of you who call yourself followers of Christ, we lead with love. Always. What does love demand? Oh, it means that we lay down so much sarcasm, so much hatred, so much gotcha, smack. Demands love. Judgment is God's. It's not ours. There's no need for us to be in there. Judgment, there's no need for any of that. That's God's. Don't steal. It's God's. It's not yours. That God chose us. What a mind bend that is. People go through their whole lives thinking they chose God. My grandpa taught me that God chose me, and he taught it to me because he just wasn't exactly sure how to say it, and he's sort of frustrated, and he said, I guess when I read the scriptures, I guess what it means is just seems evident to me that God chose me. And I don't understand it, but it's what it says, so I choose to believe it. Don't test me on it. I'll fail the exam, but it just seems that God chose me. And I was about 6 years old. And I heard it. And I can hear his voice still. John chapter 8, verses 31 and 32. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Through study, we will very often find the opposite of anxiety. We'll find peace. Through study, we will find the answers that bring us compassion, that bring us grace, that bring us change. Sometimes the opposite of fear is study. But not if our eyes are always focused to that which comforts us. Because have you ever noticed that we get comforted by less and less and less? So here's what I ask of you in closing. I'm going to call the worship team to come up. Come on up. Here's what I ask of you. If you have given your hearts to God, if you have given your lives to God, if you have given your finances to God, if you have given your family to God, if you've given your history to God, if you've given your future to God, can I encourage you today? Give your mind to God. Become students and study. Just practically, for my dyslexic self, podcasts have been huge. Audiobooks have been huge. There's this little program where if you get a text, like if you get a text book, a book that is not an audiobook, it'll read it to you. Get that. For those of you who are interested, let us know and we will get you for free a subscription to something called Right Now Media. It's sort of Netflix for spiritual stuff. You can have that free. Shows up on your TV. You can have it. If you don't have a Bible and you can't afford a Bible, come talk to me. You'll leave here with a Bible, I promise. If you've thought about buying this book, Celebration of Discipline, and you've thought about it, go buy it. Go buy it. If you can't afford it, come talk to me. You'll leave here with one, I promise. We're finishing today the inward disciplines. We're going to take a short break as we do some celebrating, some praising God, some worshiping, some thanks, some clapping, some stomping of our feet, and some amazement. And then we're going to go into the outward disciplines. Those ones are hard because people can see them. So come on, let's study together. I invite you to bow your heads with me. I'm going to pray, and then can we sing that song again? You guys still remember that one? Okay, let's pray. Lord, you have not taken who you are and what you are and made it out of reach to anybody. Although we try to do that. You did not do it. And I think about scriptures and realize how much of the scriptures were intended to be read aloud because people couldn't read and we hadn't invented the photocopier yet. And God, our mind is a muscle. And for some people, the muscle is atrophied, but it's not dead. And it can lift weights. Let these be the weights it lifts. For those in this room who are already defeated because of the word, O God, please speak louder than the other voices and tell them who you tell them, who you made them to be, who you call them, what their name is. For those who need grace and compassion, give them that. And let us learn, and let us study, and challenge us, and make us ravenous for who you are. And make us joyful. Thank you, Heavenly Father. In your name I pray. Amen.